Hello, everyone. Today's training will focus on Nakisa Real Estate, our real estate solution. Once you log in into the solution, you'll be redirected to the main page. As you can see here, you have several dashboards and reports. Some of them will showcase the number of locations you have or the number of leases. And you can also see here at the bottom that you have your critical dates reports or pie charts and bar charts, again, reflecting the information that has been input within the system. So this is really a reflection of all your data. It's customizable and you can add all the features that you want. You can also add filters for any of them and many more. At the top right, you have your search bar. As you can see here, you have the ability to search by leases, premises, location, and many more. If you are to select a specific location, you can simply click on location here. And if you were to input the name, you'll have that location appear. And if you click on it, you'll be redirected to that specific location. To the right of the search bar, you have your notification bell. As you can see here, all new activities that have been input within the system will appear on this list. So if a user is to create a new term or to modify anything within a lease, you'll have that activity here, and you also have the details of what has been added within the system and to what lease. You can always click on these and you'll be redirected to that specific lease. You can also change the language between French and English and the user as well here. If you click on your clipboard, you have the Action Center. As you can see here, your critical clauses, leases, activity history, and activations are displayed. This clipboard really showcases all your dates that will come to term. So for example, you have your option to terminate. You'll have a notification here saying that you need to take action. If you are to click on it, as you can see, you have quantity 1. Once you click on it, you have a report of that critical clause or anything you click on it, and you really can see which file it is or for what specific location. Let's go ahead and move into the admin panel. The admin panel allows the users to add any information within the system, whether it's a new building type or user-defined fields. So let's just go ahead and go into that. First of all, you have the pick list management. Here you can add a lot of information pertaining to your locations, premises, and leases. As you can see, you have several tabs here: general, location, premises, and leases. If, for example, you would want to add a new building type, you could simply go ahead and click on it. And you can see here you have already different building types within the system. Of course, we've added this, but if you had another building type, you could simply go ahead and click on the plus button and add your new building type in English and French. Once you've done so, you click on save and your list will refresh. You can do the same into the premises, whether you want to add a new area type, or if you want in your leases to add a critical clause, a condition, or a clause, you would simply click on it and again, add an option in English and French. Another important thing within the admin panel is the group management. In the group management, you'll notice that you can only add them from the admin panel. The pick list management, you always have the possibility of adding them directly into the user interface. However, the group management can only be added within the admin panel. So if you want to add here, you can add several groups. You don't have a limit on how many groups you want to add. These groups give you the ability to categorize your sales and define your groups into more detail. For example, if you were to add brand as a group, you could go ahead and define it and add American Eagle, H&M, you can add Starbucks, any other brand that is applicable to you. You can do the same for the categories in the region. For example, for the region, we've added East, North, South, and West. Let's go ahead and move into the user-defined fields. User-defined fields are basically complementary information about your file. If, for example, there's something within the system that you want to add that will better define your lease or your premise, you can do so here. So to give you an example, if you want to add business hours for your premises, you can add that here, and you can really select the type of data, whether it's text or a list or anything else, and that information can be added within the lease and the premise. Once again, keep in mind that this is also a field that can only be added within the admin panel, same as group management. So let's go ahead and jump into the main menu. As you can see here, you have your location, your premises, and your leases. Before we jump into those, let's define what they mean. So your location will always be your physical address, your building, or a lot. You'd have your head premise, which is your legal right on the land. And you have your premise, as you can see here, which will be your suite or an office, for example. And then you would have your lease, which will be your contractual obligation. If you would want to create a new lease, you would be able to simply click here and click on the plus button. As you can see, there's already a lot of locations created, and you can really see them all here. Whenever you create a new location, that location would appear at the last page. If you would want to create a location, you'd be able to click on the plus button, and all the mandatory information will be defined by an asterisk. So as you can see, you need to add your store number, file number, the type, and a lot more information. And as you can see here, you can define your groups and add them here. If you have an address, you add it here. And if you have two addresses for that location, you can add two addresses to this location. And you can also add any notes. And once all the information has been input, you click save. For the purpose of our example, we've already created one. So let's just go ahead and select it. As I mentioned, all the information that was mandatory was identified by an asterisk. And as you can see here, once you've entered all the information and you click saved, it will be reflected in the identification tab. Before we jump into the other tabs, you can see here at the top, it's a summary of your location. So you have your location name, your location tab, the status, the address, and your groups as well. Within the action menu here, you can activate or deactivate your location. You can open for modification and create a premise. Or you can also create a reminder, which will be showcased into the lease part, or archive the location. Let's go ahead and jump into the area tab. Here you can add your areas for your location. For example, we added 50,000 square meters. To do so, you'd be able to simply click on the plus button. Remember that if your location is activated, you would need to click on the open for modification button before being able to input any new information. So if you are to click on the plus button and create a new area, you'll be able to select your area here and your source. Sometimes the source can be directly from the lease or from inside in-house or anything else. As you can see, you have the possibility of adding any other option here. Here you can add the unit, whether it's in acres, hectares, and if you need more, you can always add those units within the admin panel. Once all the information has been added, click on save. And then you will see your list would be updated here. Within your partners tab, you can always add your landlords, your managers, or your vendors. In this case, we added a vendor here. In order to do so, you can just click on associate a vendor and select how many vendors you want. The operating costs tab will showcase all the operating costs for each year. In our case, we added 2020. Keep in mind that these are related to your CAM reconciliations, which will be showcased into the lease part of this training. Again, to do so, you would click on the plus button and you'll be able to add all the information pertaining to your CAM, your taxes, your utilities, or any other expenses that you have. The last two tabs are the possibility of adding any pictures for your location. In this case, if your location is a retail shopping center, you can go ahead and add that picture, and you can add several pictures as well. And the same applies for the documents. Here you can add any documents pertaining to your location. It's important to note that the lease cannot be added here since it will need to be added into the lease part only. Once all the information has been entered, you can go ahead and activate your location. Once you've activated it, as you can see, you can open for modification or you can go ahead and create a lease. Usually you would click on plus and you would input all the mandatory information, but we've already created our premise. So here on the navigation tree, you can see that the premise is already created. If you toggle over these, you can see location, premise, and lease. So let's just go ahead and jump into premise. You can also have the possibility of having several premises for the same location. So within the premises, you can see you have, once again, the identification tab. You have all the information that you've previously input shown here, and you have the same layout as in the location. You have your summary here and your action menu here. If you want to add any notes whenever you create your premise, you can do so at the bottom, or if you want to make any modifications here, remember to click Save. Let's go ahead and move into the Areas tab. As you can see, you once again have an area tab, and this time it will reflect your area for your premise and not your location. So you can go ahead and add, for example, a retail area type for 25,000 square meters. And you can also define the dates. If you don't have the dates, you can leave it blank. But if you know that your premise will be active from 2020 to 2025, you can input that date here. Into the sales tab, you'll be able to input all your sales pertaining to your percentage rent. We'll jump into that into the lease part of the training, but if you do not use percentage rent as a client, you won't need to add any information here. You have two possibilities in this case. You can add your sales manually by creating a sale each time, or you can also upload a file, and we have a template available within our system. The for sale and for lease tab is simply to add any land that is for sale or for lease in the future. You can really define that price, the brokerage price, or any other information pertaining to that specific piece of land that you wish to sell or lease to somebody else. Once again, you can add pictures. Considering your premise is your suite or your office, you can add any pictures that reflect that suite or that office. And you can add, once again, several pictures if you wish to do so. And you can upload the documents here. Simply click on the upload a document, and you'll be able to add any documents pertaining to your premises. Our last field here is the user-defined fields. As I mentioned, within the admin menu, you can really add anything that you want within the user-defined fields. Is really to add complementary information to your premise. So as you can see, within the premise, we don't have any space where we could input the opening date. And if that's something that's important as a client, you can add it in user-defined fields and define that date here. Once you've added it, you simply click Save. Once all the information has been input within the system, you would usually click on Activate. And as you can see, once it's activated, which already we've activated it, you can create a lease right away. So here you would usually click on Create a Lease, and you would be redirected to the lease page. As you can see, the lease page is very similar to the premise and the location. Once again, you have the identification tab with the type of lease, the state, whether it's initial, original, or anything else, and the category of lease. Once all this information has been added, you can go ahead and move into your contract and terms. The contract and terms also reflect your rent table within real estate, and you can input all that information here. We've already activated everything, but we'll still go through it. As you can see, one of the first steps is to activate your master agreement. You would go ahead and activate this information, add your vendor, and activate it here. You'll have the activation button usually here, and you'll see your state change to active here. Once that's done, you can go ahead and move into contract. And as you can see, once again, you have the general information, the accounting information, which you will need to confirm and simply click on Save. The Save button would be at the bottom here. And here you'll be able to add your partners. You can add one or several partners depending on the needs that you have as a client. And once that's done, you once again activate the contract. Once the contract has been activated, you can add your terms. As you can see here, for example, we added base rent. You can add anything else as well. If you have parking that you have within this lease, you can add it as well here. Once all the information has been added and the dates as well, you can go ahead and activate the terms. And then all you need to do is go into your activation tab. And once again, you'll need to activate your general information, your terms, and your units. As you can see here within the terms, you have to exercise the terms that you've entered. If, for example, you've entered base rent and parking, but the parking doesn't apply right away, you won't need to exercise that term. You can also send to initial and activate your units. And once that's done, you'll be able to really activate everything here until your state is active. Keep in mind that this is the view that you have within Nakisa Real Estate, but you can also go within Nakisa Lease Administration and have that information as well. So as you saw, I clicked on the arrow and it redirects me to Nakisa Real Estate. And all the information that has been entered into NRE auto-populates within NLE. And here you can consult your schedules and have the NLE point of view, as you can see here. Let's move back into NRE. Once everything has been activated within your contracts and terms, you can go ahead and move into the other tabs. Here within the percentage rent, as I mentioned earlier, you had to previously input your sales in order to be able to do these calculations. Your calculations of percentage rent will be based on the sales that have been input within the system. And you can then choose to add conditions to the percentage rent and calculate your percentage rent. If you would go into the calculated percentage rent, you would see a report of everything that needs to be paid in percentage rent. Keep in mind that your percentage rent are a part of your sales that will need to be paid to the landlord on top of your base rent. You can then go ahead and add here your critical clauses. For example, we added an option to renew. You can input the dates and notification dates, and you can really add anything else that you need here relating to your critical clauses. Keep in mind that your critical clauses are always related to a date, and those critical clauses will be reflected within the Action Center. You can then go ahead and add your clauses. For example, exclusivity type, you can add that here and input all the information that you need. This type of clause will simply state that you are the only person allowed to have, for example, a pharmacy within 500 square feet of that location. So that clause would be input here. Again, this clause will be taken from your lease that has been previously signed. You can also add your conditions. These conditions would be related to your reconciliation tool. Again, to add a condition, you'll be able to click on the plus button and add as many conditions as you need. Within the reconciliation tab, you'll be able to reconcile the period. In our case, we reconciled 2020, beginning of the year to end of the year. And as you can see here, this relates to your operating costs that we've previously entered within the location. And if you were to go in it to see the details, you see that your lease reconciliation details are here, and you have the balance calculated based on the information that has been previously entered. You can also add any lease incentives. If you, for example, you have free rent for the first month, you'll be able to add that here. Again, you can click on the plus button and add that information. Same goes for insurance, whether it's general liability or security insurance, accident insurance, anything that you want to add, you can upload that document here, and you can keep track of everything within the same page. If you have any separate agreements, you can add that here. And once again, you don't have a limit into the uploads that you do. You can really upload several documents that will define your lease. Within the documents type, you'll be able to finally upload your lease. Like I mentioned earlier, it's important to upload your lease only within the lease section of your file, of your location and the premise and the lease that you create. And finally, Just like in premise, here you can add your user-defined fields. If, for example, you want to add business hours, you can do so here, add the information, and click Save. Once all the information has been added, you can go ahead and activate your lease. In our case, it's already been done, but the activation button will usually be here at the top. If you would want to deactivate this lease, as you can see, you can do that there by clicking deactivate, or you can create a lease version. Once your lease has been activated, you cannot modify information within the contracts and terms, for example, so you would need to create a lease version in order to be able to do that. To create a lease version, click on it, and as you can see, you can select your activity type to modify terms, for example, and click on Save. And this will create a new premise here or a new lease, depending on what you are working on. You can also export here, once again, your lease summary and see your scheduled payments. Your scheduled payments will be reflected depending on what you have within the contracts and terms. If, for example, you have base rent, as you can see, you'll have your monthly payments displayed here. If ever you have a one-time payment that you want to create, you can do that here and really input that one-time charge that you would have within the system. So once everything has been input here, your lease is active and your location, premise, and lease have been created. Another thing that's important to know within Nakisa Real Estate is the possibility of accessing dashboards and reports. Like I mentioned at the beginning, which I've showcased, as you can see here, you have your dashboards and reports that really display all the information within the system. But you also have dashboards that have already been created within the system. For example, if you were to click on location dashboards, you really have the information about all the locations you have within the system. Of course, this will reflect your information. So if you want to have any locations within Finland, you'll have all the locations displaying here within any other country where you are. Same applies for the premise dashboards and also for the lease dashboards. You can always create a custom dashboard and you can do any calculations or any dashboards that you want, whether it's pie charts, bar charts, or anything else. You can really customize this to your needs. In the reports tab, as you can see, you once again have the critical dates reports. This is a very important report that you can use. It really displays all your critical clause types, whether it's access to premises, auto renewal, option to renew, or anything else. You really have all that information here. So this concludes our training into Nakisa Real Estate. So we learned today how to create a location, a premise, and a lease, and how to navigate within our system.